Welcome to this Discord event. I have invited Stephen D. Reigstad. He is a MUFON Certified Field Investigator, and I wanted to talk to him to find out how we in Hessdalen should work with UFO witness reports. So he did introduce himself, and then I lost the first 3 minutes of sound for some reason. Suddenly it started. So when you when I start the video now, it's just going to be straight into it. Uh, he did explain how he has been interested in this his whole life, but now as he retired as a policeman, then he got certified in MUFON, and he's sharing his experience with doing field report. And then after that, we had some more guests and more discussions. So enjoy.
Which is the case management system. Please answer the best you can. Put the answers where they go, and then click on reply. And then, of course, comes back to me. Um, Recently, MUFON has started to require to ask some, ask, I say personal questions, but looking for another word that I can't find right now, which at my age happens on occasion. MUFON's now requiring you to ask the following information from witnesses and that the information will remain anonymous. It just starts out with street address, city, zip code, and date of birth if that's not on the form. There's places for all of that, but a lot of people will leave that out intentionally or unintentionally. And then witness background, your marital status, married, single, divorced, widowed, number of children, a vocation, career, and ethnicity, which I've run into some questions on that, but that's fine. And then we just start. I I should say we, but it's all personalized. There's what 400 or so, 400 to 600, depending on the numbers you listen to, that are field investigators for MUFON. And so what I do is I look at the form. It's called Form One, not very difficult. Form One, and Form One has what they've reported, and it has a synopsis what of what they're reporting, and then they get to tell the story. The important thing that I've always found, whether it be law enforcement or here in my MUFON experience, is that you let them all tell the story first. Whether they're reporting the UFO, you can make some notes during that conversation if it's one on one or by phone. And what you want to do is you can, like I said, you can take your notes, think of your questions. Don't try not to interrupt unless they get way off. I've had people telling me about something that happened on November 2nd of this year, and then all of a sudden say, but when I was delivering newspapers in 1973, let me tell you what happened. And then I'll interject and say, let's talk about this one first. We can always go back to the historical report. So you have to keep them in a direction. Uh, but when they get done telling their story, that's the time for you to fill in. One of the first things that I always ask is, what was your pre-event activity? That just tells you what they were doing at the time, whether they were going for a walk, and sometimes they're very descriptive that they entered a wildlife area off of Highway 67 down by Williams Bay, Wisconsin. And they just entered that area when they saw a bright light in the sky. Now, that's real good pre event activity. Um, you don't need the whole day. What were your, like we might do in law enforcement in a major case, is asking them what happened. Um, Start 24 hours ago and tell me what happened up to this point. But you don't really need to do that. You just need to know what their pre-event activity um, was, and that kind of helps you with a complete story when you're putting it all together. And very important is the next question I always ask if they don't include it is what was the location and time of your event, sighting, whatever they're calling it. Um, that is one of the most important things because during your investigation, you're going to pull up Google Earth Pro and you're going to get a look at that address or that location and be able to see what they were seeing, what the ground is, what the terrain was,
Mhm.
um, whether it was woods or fields or suburban or whatever. But that is all on what we call Form 30, which is page 2. Why Form 1 is the first page, and our second page we work from is called Form 30. But anyway, I digress. The next thing, after you have the location and the time of the event, because you're going to work from that later, is how long was the duration of the event? Um, Part of the form shows hours, minutes, seconds, but people get that goofed up. And you get a video, say they sent a video as evidence, and you have a video attachment of 45 seconds, but the report itself says 45 minutes. They most likely just put it in a wrong position or in the wrong place. That's okay. I mean, everybody makes mistakes, and you find a number of them normally on a, especially when somebody's really excited and they've just wanted to report it 5 minutes after they saw it. Um, so once you have that, and I'm going to go to my next page here. Once you have the duration of the event, so now you know where it is, how long it took place, and some of the things that you can listen to, especially now you're watching the video or the photos. And in the video, say that there's a video, we get that a lot, and they'll say, I saw this, I saw that. But in the video itself, you hear someone else talking in the background going, wow, now it's over here, or look, it went to the left. And so you have to listen to the video very close and try to determine how many people were present because there's nothing better than multi witness reports. Individual witness reports, I don't want to say they're taken with a grain of sand, but they're they really shouldn't be, but they are because nobody else saw it. There's no other witnesses. Um, and try not to say too many times. So I was looking at this one of the last ones, and what she put for her pre-event activities is, well, my husband and I were. Now we know we have two witnesses, her and her husband, and so then that goes into our next question. Our next question is, does your husband agree with the assessment of the event? That's one of the questions you would ask in the and then it would go on to, I heard four people on the video. Do they agree with your assessment? If not, um, would you explain that or have them explain that, please? You mentioned there was another witness at the time of the event. Then you want to know if you're grouped at the time because sometimes, and it helps, especially with any type of a triangulation or anything else that I'm sure you're familiar with when it comes to your lights, is that if you're looking at different um, from one point, or someone was on the val, or someone was in the valley, and someone was at the edge of the city, and someone was over here. If you have multiple witnesses, but yet you have different locations, that can help you also when you're putting together the show. Right now, you're not just gathering information. So you compare the video and the photos in the report. And one of the things that we list is we ask for the elevation of the object. Now, I just had one within the last week where the woman estimated that the elevation of the object on the form, she put 90 degrees, but yet she provided a video. And on the video itself, it was obvious that it wasn't probably 35, 40 degrees. So then when I sent the questions to her, I said, that would place an object directly above your head. You listed 90 degrees. The video and photos appear that it is much closer to the horizon. So how many degrees, if you think about it, or look at your video again, do you believe the object was above the horizon? And then I put in parentheses, I put an extended vertical fist is approximately 10 degrees. So if she can go like this, oh, 10, 20, 30, oh, it's about 28 degrees. And so that always helps, give them a little visual. Um, Always the direction of the object. You want to know what direction you're looking at. That's important because you're going to look at planet placement, what planets were visible at the time, where they were in the sky, and you're going to look at all that. So, of course, you need the direction that it was first seen and the direction that it was last seen. Um, you can use indicators. In the same case, I had the woman say that the direction first seen and last seen was unknown. But yet in the video, you can just see it's twilight and the sun had just set to her right, which of course would have been west. And so the object would have been in the southern sky, and the height put it in the ecliptic. So um, the brightest thing on November 2nd, and it was listed as perfect visibility in the planet um, in the planet sky or in the night sky. Perfect visibility. The brightest of 2023 in the first couple of days of November was Saturn, and she said when they magnified it, it had a ring around it, and hmm, that's where we put clue. No. Okay. Then you can ask things like, well, do you believe a lot of people don't realize once the sun is set that anything still at elevation will be illuminated, whether it be an aircraft or whatever. An aircraft at 30,000 feet can reflect sunlight long after the sun is set because the sun, of course, is still hitting that aircraft. So I usually ask, do you believe the object was glowing or reflecting sunlight, making its own light, whatever seems to um, fit the bill for what she's described. And then let's go to vehicles or more video information. People take videos inside of a car with their phone or with a camera, and they'll ask. And so I usually ask, were you inside or outside of the vehicle when you um, took the video? Because it looks like it was through the windshield and there's lens flare. You're always going to get lens flare off a wind. Well, not always, but most likely you're going to have some kind of a lens flare, and you're going to be able to see that while you're watching the video. You think, yeah, that looks like a street light going by, which it could be. So you have to ask because they won't tell you. They'll just say, "I'm in a certain location." Unless you ask them, "Were you in a car?" Well, yeah, I was in the car. Well, you don't know that, so you have to ask. Um, and to jump ahead, I try not to ask more than 8 or 10 questions on the first email because otherwise you can lose your witness. And I try to be specific to what they've already said. I just use for clarification or to add on to what they said. Um, the other thing witnesses will do, they almost always guess that an object is larger than it is. They'll almost every time guess that it's larger than it is. And the reason being is that if you think about it, the sun um, and moon at full moon and the sun are only half a degree in the sky. Now if you ask somebody, oh, Jesus, you know, at least as big as the moon, it had to be, it's huge. Well, they're really not because, like I say, it's a half a degree. So you can ask them questions on the size, just by asking him which of the following objects is held at arm's length would completely cover the object that you observe. And then you can just list them off, whatever you think might be appropriate under the conditions, and say a p, a dime, a penny, a nickel, a quarter. Um, and then when I got the response from one gentleman, he said, I was leaning back in the back seat of a car, looking up through the windshield, and it was curb to curb, house to house. Well, that's pretty big. So it's all in how you ask the question. Um, the other thing is that always pay attention if there's a holiday, if you have a local holiday, or even an opening of a car dealership in your city. Things like that, because they project things into the sky that might be seen, especially on a cloud base. And so I usually ask, did the circle of lights you saw appear to be a projection of any kind? And then I had one gentleman recently that was on a lake and he was fishing, and it was about 3:30 in the morning. And so I asked him with the lights if he could see any track or beam of the lights to the ground or the water of the lake, because that gives you two possibilities. It's either a projection from the ground beamed up to the object that you're seeing, or it's from the object and it's being beamed down. That also gives you quite a um, expanse of looking at whatever you're looking at. Um, and then there's a new question to my arsenal that I picked up at the 2023 International MUFON Symposium. There is a woman there that presented named Linda Zimmerman. Some of you might know her, some might not. Linda Zimmerman is one of the foremost, I guess you could say, experts, although I don't believe there's any experts in this field. But if there was an expert, she would be one. And she's an expert in the Hudson Valley sighting. That was a flap that the U.S. had. For those not familiar, um, would have been in the late 80s, early 90s. Hudson Valley UFOs. You can look it up. She wrote the book on it, Linda Zimmerman. Well, she came out with a recent book and she did a presentation on it, and it was called Animal Animal Reactions to UFO Sightings, something to that effect.
Mhm.
And her question, which I have now added to my arsenal, is, do you recall hearing any environmental noise before, during, or after your sighting, or did it go quiet at any time? Depending on where you are, like this gentleman that was on the water, I asked him if he heard any crickets, critters, frogs, etc. before, during, or after your sighting. It might be a farm field or a rural setting, and I'll ask, did you hear any cattle, dogs, wildlife? Just depending on the location of your event, whether they went crazy. Um, and she has some very good examples in her book. And one she found was related to frequency. The reason I say that is because there was two dogs and a cat in this residence, and a woman sees light and a typical flying saucer in her backyard. Her dog is going crazy. The cat was running into the wall,
Mm.
and the other dog was just laying there looking at those two like, what the hell? And two of the animals are going crazy, one's just laying there. Now, she went further and said, well, what is different from that one dog than the other dog and the other cat? She said, oh, well, that dog is deaf. So you can make your own assessment from there. But the dog that was deaf didn't hear anything, didn't hear a frequency, didn't hear it. Now, still would have felt vibration, but apparently there wasn't a vibration, or that dog may have responded also. And for you that are just hanging in there, I'm almost done. And let's see. Get these 2 pages on printer. Okay, now you're going to use Flight Radar 24 or one of the, excuse me, one of the aircraft, because of course you're going to want to know if there was any transponding aircraft in the area at the time of the sighting. Is there anything transponding? And so I use Flight Radar 24. I just have the first, well, not the free version, but the next version is called the gold version. And that lets you go back 365 days historically on a playback. So that, of course, helps. The free version, you don't have the playback on it. When you can go back to a year, that helps me a lot where I can do that. So that one of the questions is if they haven't filled it out on the form, there's a place for it. But if they left it blank or they're saying they're not sure, you can ask again, did you hear any aircraft before, hear or see, I'm sorry, any aircraft before, during, or after your UFO sighting? If so, in what direction did they come from? And in what direction did they leave? A lot of times you will see um, navigation lights, avoidance lights on a video, um, and but yet they don't mention any aircraft. So that's one of the first times, or one of the best times to ask. And then a lot of times they'll report, because it's big lately, the word orb or light, and it was bright. Now, bright is okay. The orb or light was bright, but they got to do better than that in my book, describing that. So then you just simply ask them, was the light glowing from within? Was it reflecting light? And how would you describe it? And that makes them think. They have to think about the light they saw, which might be very important in your case with the lights. Um, then sometimes they're over my head, and I mean more than on occasion. Um, like I say, I'm just a retired Norwegian cop, and when people start talking about the triangle rotated to a z-axis, I that doesn't mean that much to me. I have to look it up. And so I said, could you extend? I asked him, could you expand on your statement that the triangle rotated to a z-axis? I looked that up, and luckily, the man that was reporting it only lived about 20 minutes from my house. So we met at a local Perkins restaurant, and I was able to do this in person, which was really nice for a change. I also found out that he was a retired mathematician. So everything that he talked about was a bit over my head, and I told him so. So I said, you're gonna have to help me." Anyway, when I looked it up, and after talking to him, that meant that when it presented as a pyramid laying on its side, is that correct? And so if you think that you know, or that you have found out what that person meant, always ask that little disclaimer at the end, is that correct? Because if it isn't, and they're a mathematician, a physicist, whatever, they will um, expand on that. Sometimes I'll even ask, because some have said saw the light and it almost looked like it was going to hit the ground, or did hit the ground at a long distance away. You're going to check. Okay, thanks. You're going to look at the fireballs and meteor reports, AMS, American Meteorological Society. You're going to check those sites also to see if there was a fireball or something, depending on what description that they're giving you. And you can see if there was a fireball in the area. You can also ask them, do you recall hearing sirens or emergency vehicles during or after the sighting? Now, in a local sighting, well, not even a local sighting, actually, I had one in Pennsylvania, and being a former law enforcement officer for more than 30 years, I have no problem with calling the police department. And I'll tell them I'm a retired law enforcement officer out of Wisconsin. I got a question. I'm wondering if I could talk to the OIC that was on last Tuesday afternoon. And they'll check and they'll say, well, certainly here. He'll be on tomorrow at 2 o'clock, and I'll call tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock, and I'll say, did anybody report anything unusual of seeing this, or that, or any of your officers that were on the road? And they don't. And knowing that I was a former law enforcement officer, and I'm asking direct, specific questions, they're used to that, and um, that has really helped me. I've used that in Wisconsin also. That if you have a specific date and time of sirens or hearing emergency vehicles, I have an app called I have an app called Pulse Point, which tells me if there's um, any accidents in the area, ambulance calls, fire calls, things like that. So I don't have to actively listen to a scanner, but it'll give me a list of things. Um, Also, it helps that my oldest son is a law enforcement officer in my county, and my youngest son is a paramedic. So it's a lot of times it's sources of information. You don't have to know everything. You don't, you have to know where to find the answer. That was what I always told my cops. You don't have to know everything about law enforcement, but you got to know where to find the answers. So, after that, then they only have a few questions left for them usually. One is describe how the sighting ended. And that's real important if you think about it, because sometimes the object had disappeared and zipped away. Other times, well, it just stayed there for so long and it happened to be acting like a planet or whatever in the eclipse. It was just there for so long that sooner or later we had to leave. Well, most excited people will never ever leave if they see a UFO or something they've never seen before. But if they've never seen this bright light and they've never seen Saturn on November 2nd of 2023 when it was the brightest ever on at that time or whatever, they will always come up with something, whether they left, they stayed, the object left, the object stayed. So you have to have an end to your story. You put all this stuff together all the way through, and of course you're going to go back and use Google Earth, and you're going to go back and use Flight Radar 24, and you're going to go back with the new answers that they have given you, and you're going to check all that out, and then put it down so you end up with a story altogether. As a matter of fact, the one I told you about with the crickets and critters and everything, he told me it went absolutely silent. He said he's never had that happen before. He's fished in that spot for most of his life. He had pushed his kayak down there at 3:30 in the morning, and all of a sudden, everything just went absolutely quiet to the point that he was waiting for an attack or for a loud explosion or something to go on because he's never heard it that quiet. What I did is I asked him, "Would you be willing to talk to Linda Zimmerman?" and gave him the same background I gave you. And he said, "Certainly." Well, I had her email from the conference, so I sent her an email and I said, "Hey, this guy told me this. He said he'd talk to you." She says, "I'll definitely get a hold of him." So you can connect other people that can help it will help them just in knowing that you've heard something. I heard something at a conference and I ended up sending this guy to her, and I hope that that turned out well. Okay, here we are at the end. There's two other things that I ask. The last two questions I said, is there anything that I did not ask that you think I should have? The reason I say that is pretty self-explanatory, but how many times have you been in a conversation that ended and you walked away and you go, God, I wish Steve would have asked me this, or I wish he would have talked about this? Well, if you have a question like this, then they can add that on there. And then the last question I said, is there anything else you may want to add that you did not put in the MUFON report? If so, now is the time. And I let them, then that way they can. I have had some, well, most wouldn't, don't put anything in there, or else say, nope, that'll do it. Thanks a lot. And then I've had others that now I end up with two more pages of information, and my second email to them will have many more questions to put it all together. Once it gets all together and you have all the boxes, MUFON wants you to fill in every box, every whether you put an N/A in there, or um, whether you just can't skip boxes, is what I'm saying. So you get everything done, put all the evidence where it belongs, and that's pretty much how it works with me and witnesses.
Hmm, thank you.
The, the end.
The oh no, oh no, oh no. Now the question starts. And actually, I have one at the bottom here. Where, Lavera is asking, I wonder how long an average interview from MUFON lasts. How long does this
Okay.
take? But
All
it
right.
sounds like you
Well,
have like
like it,
three emails, and then do you talk to them at the end always?
it not always. It depends. Let me start back at the beginning. First, they fill out, as I stated, they fill out the report.
Mm,
And then I say I'll contact them in three emails. The reason I say three is because some people don't want to talk to you anymore. They filed their report,
mm,
they've done their job, they've moved on. It's another day, and they don't want to talk to you anymore. So I'll send them one, and I'll wait 2 days, and then I send them a second one. I say this is the second of three that I said I'd send you. I send the same questions unless I found another question as I was looking at the
mhm,
report. Then I do the same thing with the third one. If I receive no response, then in under the witness interview where I have all my questions listed um, on Form 30, put all the questions on the witness interview. Then what I do is that then they're pretty much done. And I'll put in my investigative summary. I've asked these questions. I've been unable to find any additional information. The location is important. One of the things that I did mention again that I should have is weather underground or whatever weather um, site that you use. That's also important for that. You're going
mhm,
to want a date and a time and the weather information. So the weather information to go along with that. Was it cloudy? What was the temperature? Was the temperature close to the dew point, which gave it a low ceiling? Things like that. So you'll also need that. So if they don't send any of that information that they didn't send initially, then the three emails go out and they're done. And I make a note I didn't get any response.
mhm. So
If
that
they
is
send me back, yes, go ahead.
that is kind of like a status then, and this is unresolved because you didn't get the information you wanted.
Yes, it depends how much detail and what they did
Mm,
initially.
mm,
Um, and the report may still go as, you know, try to get it through as a unknown or I just don't know. But normally with something like that, when people refuse, I say refuse, that's a strong word. When people just don't want to talk to you anymore,
mhm,
um, that that comes out more of a not exactly an informational only. We have a bunch of different, unknown, um, informational IFO, identified flying object, and
mhm,
then of course, and then you have the unknown, and then you have the not enough information. I
mhm,
hate
mhm.
that one. But if there's not enough information to even to make a guess, um, then
Do you have?
it goes that way.
Yeah.
Now, I got to answer the rest of your question. Say they respond the first time, I send the email out, they give me all the information I need, and they go, yeah, and if there's anything else you need, you have my because all their information would be on the form. Give me a call, send me another email. I'll be willing to talk to you. And then you can call up the person
Hmm.
or send an email and say, I'd like to call tomorrow at 3 p.m. or whatever. And you call them up and talk to them. The other thing that I'll do is if I have enough information already, I will, if you have enough information already, then I'll send them a thank you email. Thank you very much for your report to MUFON. This is very important to us. Every report is important to us. It'll be filed in our case management system. A lot of people will ask as their last thing, or sometime in anything you wanted to add, they'll say, was there anything like this? Did anybody else see anything that night? They'll want to know, that because I'm sure you've all received the report. Is the first line of their report is, I'm telling you, I'm not really crazy because this is a great, and
Hmm.
I had people tell me that on the phone, just so you know, I'm not a nut. And I said, well, you're not a nut, but yet I'm talking to you about a UFO report. So who's the nut, me or you? And just try to
Yeah,
put them at ease.
yeah.
But I hope I answered that question because sometimes it's very short.
Hmm.
Sometimes you just send them out a thank you and say, thank you so much. If you need anything else, you have my email. And other times it's like pulling teeth.
Hmm. Hmm.
So with a witness in an interview. And go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah. Now I have more questions that is coming in, and I want actually to get some other people to ask too. But I have some questions myself first. How often do you feel that you meet people that just want to fool you, tricksters?
Very rarely, actually.
Yeah.
Um, and it usually has to do with videos.
Yeah.
Uh, People that say, I'm sorry, I didn't get a picture of it, I didn't get a video, but this is what I saw. And I
Hmm.
know what I saw. They're usually, um, they're normally telling the truth.
Hmm.
But that's why I like the olden days in law enforcement where you were talking to somebody and you
Hmm.
could I had a couple of courses. They're called read interview and interrogation courses. And then they got an advanced read interrogation there. And you can pretty much look at somebody sitting on a table across from you. And if their eyes go to the left and up, they're trying to come back. They're trying to find a visual. They're trying to grasp onto something. If they're looking down and to the right, they might be not telling you the truth.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
there's so many indicators of truthfulness, but it's really hard when you're just using email
Yeah, yeah.
and things like that. But then again, when you look at the MUFON report, and I'm sure if you look at some other agency, maybe National UFO Reporting Center,
Hmm.
Peter Davenport does a fabulous job, and he's pretty much one guy, and
Hmm.
so he just takes in the reports and has some help. But um,
Do
when
you
you
know how
look
many
at,
you
go
know how
ahead.
many reports you get on a like yearly basis, monthly basis, or about this?
Personally,
Oh, you,
um,
because
per
you're
yes, go
taking
ahead.
reports for one area, or?
No, well, I'm what they call it. I'm assigned to what's called CAG, and I'll try to give you the short version of that. But anyway, I have Wisconsin.
Hmm.
One of there's other people, but I do mainly Wisconsin cases. I say mainly Wisconsin cases, but that hasn't been the case because I'm I'm assigned to what's called the CAG, CAG, and that's oh my God, now I'm going to forget my own acronym.
Well,
Um, the assistant group, case assistant group is what CAG stands for. And that means we can help out on cases. from all over the lower 48. Um,
But
because most
MUFON
is
is,
done like by interview.
yeah, yeah. MUFON
Pardon?
is the entire world, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
My state director, Fred Kohler, actually has a number of states. I think
Hmm.
he's got several states, and I know he's the state director or the international director for I think Iran,
Hmm.
Syria, and he may have some others.
Hmm.
If you look on MUFON.com, you can look under state directors, and there's a list there. But yes, it's international. It's all over.
Hmm.
Anybody can get on MUFON.com and report, and there'll be the categories, just like Hynek had close
Hmm.
encounters of the first, second, third kind,
Hmm.
and it'll depend how we respond to it. Me,
Yeah.
I'm kind of a down the road. Um, like I say, I'm not going to go out and measure the telephone pole in Atlanta, Georgia, when I
Hmm.
live in Wisconsin. That's just
Hmm.
not going to work. And so I'm normally Wisconsin, but the last 6 or so cases, I've only had one from Wisconsin. I got 5 on my desk right now, and I got a New Hampshire, a
Hmm.
Georgia, a Mississippi, um, so
Yeah.
all over.
Yeah. In a way, that's my last comment. Then I want to kind of give a little context before I'm going to ask Susan to open her camera again and comment in here. But
Mhm.
one comment I have is that it's kind of interesting for me that in Hessdalen, it's all in one location. Well, it's a valley, it's 10, 15
Right,
kilometers long, but all these reports is in the same area. So it's like a UFO hotspot. And
right.
I find that in a way interesting because then you go to this problem of sample size. And if you get one here, one there, one who knows all over the place, yeah,
Yes.
but in Hessdalen, it's all in one valley. And I find that kind of interesting. So now I
I
just
have one
want,
question for
yeah,
you,
yeah, go on, shoot.
if that's okay.
Yeah.
Talking about your valley. What are the tectonics like there? Um, with mountain, valley, you know, earthquake lights,
Hmm.
things like that. What
Hmm.
what is your feeling on that?
Well, I should not be the one answering that one. I know that I have Massimo and I have Erling, and they could answer that properly, and maybe I should invite them to do so. And Susan, you have to wait until Erling is answering that question. So, Erling, do you want to comment on that question? And you have to unmute yourself if you find that button. There you are. I can't hear you. No, I cannot hear you. Uh, Try
I
again.
just ask as a novice from the
Yeah, yeah.
U.S. that
It's an
doesn't
interesting
hasn't
area.
done the research, but
Yeah.
it, it's got
It's
to be something, like
yeah,
you said.
yeah.
It's all
It's
right here. There's got to be something
must be
here.
something in the ground in a
Is
way.
it
Yeah.
something that's in? Is it something that's attracting them? Some,
Hmm.
is it environmental? Is it? I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know.
And like I
Erling,
say, I'm
I see that
just
Erling
a
is
rookie.
trying to. I see that Erling
Okay,
is
I'm out.
trying to get in here, but I can't hear you. Um, Massimo, do you want to comment on this question? Because you know more about the ground, and I should not comment on that.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you. Yes.
Yeah. I don't know the detailed geological situation of Esdalen, but I remember from Erling Project Esdalen 1984
Hmm.
that the seismometers didn't record particular um, earthquakes or small, something very small. Okay,
Hmm.
so it was not particularly relevant. What is relevant there is that it's a place where there were mines with a lot of copper, of I think zinc, and um, and also scandium,
Hmm.
which is used in aerospace industry. So there is something interesting in the area. And I remember, before telling this, I can say I don't think there is a particular fault lines there, like in other places of the world, because fault lines are subject to seismic shocks and also to the piezoelectric effect, which trigger uh, luminous phenomena in the atmosphere. I don't
Hmm.
think this happens in Esdalen. But I remember I was speaking with Bjorn Gittelhauge
Hmm.
20 years ago, and rightly Bjorn was suggesting the possibility that there is ice coming from the river, entering inside the caves, inside the holes of the mines. The ice then compresses the rocks. I think there is quartz. And when the ice compresses the rocks, can liberate piezoelectricity. And in this case, so you generate a voltage in the atmosphere.
Hmm.
But this doesn't explain the reason why the Stalin lights, as well as in other places of the world, are so self-contained for so long time. They should extinguish very in a few seconds. Okay,
Hmm.
so it's not so easy. There is a triggering cause that can be piezoelectricity, maybe also the ice compression. Not in the case of seismic shocks in Stalin. I might be wrong.
Hmm.
Erling, of course, knows much more than me. But yeah, well, that's what I would like to comment. I have
Yeah.
also a question to, first of all, thank you for this explanation, because this description, which is very clear and shows a very ingenious system of diagnosing, very rational and very complete. I'm wondering if people release videos, for instance, high, good quality video, is there a service that is analyzing those videos, or are you sending those videos for image analysis from to another institution or something? This is a question.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And as for the video, we do have our own video experts. Um, I said expert again, but in video, I think you can be an expert. But we do have our own people. I don't know that anything that I've ever had just recently, or I've never sent one off. I have sent emails to certain people that were told to look at them because they have access to the system, the case management system, and they can look at those videos. We of course
Okay.
look at the metadata. We look at the data on the back. You were asking earlier about the truthfulness
Hmm.
of videos and things like that. If a man says that at 3 p.m. on November 2nd, I took this video, and then I pull the video up, and then I go to metadata, um, a site metadata to, I'm sure it's easily accessed, but I go to metadata and I drop that video in there, and it'll tell me what time it was taken, how many feet. It gives me all the data on that video. So
Clear.
if I get the metadata back, sir, and it tells me that the guy took it at 11 in the morning, he edited it at 2 in the afternoon, he edited again at 4, and then sent it to me, that would be a heads up that there's a problem there. So a lot of it we can just do ourselves by looking at the metadata on the photos and the videos.
Mhm.
But if we do have a question, and like I say, I think it's only happened on one or two occasions where I've sent it out for somebody else to look at.
Clear,
Did that
thank you.
did that answer your question, sir?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Can
Uh,
you
You're
hear me
welcome.
now?
yes, now we can hear you. You went in and
Oh,
out,
great,
or out and in.
great. The sound was fixed.
Yeah.
Oh, there were some questions. Let me see if I remember.
Well,
You was asking if there was um, a line in the valley. It is. So there is a what was it called? Where it's possible to move, but the location itself is very quiet. Coming to earthquakes, it's very quiet.
Magnus has put out these maps in the chat. So for those who want to look, and it was someone else, Heights in the Long Grass, has put out the plate tectonics map. But Magnus has this map explaining where there's different metals in the ground. So that's kind of interesting. And didn't we have some comments that many of the lights, after all, are seen along this line? Maybe, yeah, Magnus would like to comment on that. Um,
I saw one in the chat that said something they called it the red line. I don't know.
Yeah,
yeah,
I can
Anything to you
explain
guys.
that.
yeah.
So I was talking to a geologist that I know. He works for the National Geologist Institute called NGU in Norway, and he's not into the kind of UAP phenomenon, but I just asked him, is there anything special here in this area in your mind? And I showed him in this map. Well, first I asked him one time. He said, no, there's nothing. I've looked at it once after we talked about it, and there's nothing. This is very common. And then I asked him again, and I showed this map, and he said, yeah, it's kind of interesting. There's this compression line because you have a sharp interface between the quartz rich fillet and the metal rich. So you have a lot of quartz, and you have a sharp interface towards another rock, which is actually greenstone. Confusingly enough, that's the brown thing on the map. But he couldn't. He said that still that I mean, if you really need well, if the quartz could be activated, it should be through some kind of seismic activity, and we haven't registered that. But then I also saw just in the chat from another person that asked about magnetic inconsistencies, and I talked to another geophysicist at the same institute, and she said that they have made helicopter scans of geological, like electric and magnetic, and she said there were some inconsistencies, but she couldn't give me any more details about that. That's kind of the story. So it's kind of inconclusive, I would say.
I want to, I'm sorry if I'm moving a little bit away from this, but kind of I want to go back to this scientific measurements because, or I want to comment on that because the subject today is witness reports, and I think that there are two ways that I look at it. We use witness reports to kind of start a scientific hypothesis. I can't say that word, hypothesis. So you,
Hypothesis.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, because you want something that can be tested through experimentation. You want something that you can falsify. So in a way, I feel that the witness reports is the start of that. I mean, the reason that Erling put up this blue box is because many people reported in this area we see something. So then he put up the blue box. Then we have a scientific measurement. But then every time it's witness reports, it's like anecdotal, and we don't believe people. It's the problem of sample size or lack of bias and whatever you put in all this
Mhm.
stuff that you don't believe. Why do we believe people? But in other areas, you use witness reports to create some kind of a statistical analysis, after all. So I'm thinking like, and this is why I want to invite Susan in a way, because when we have a lot of witness reports, can we use this as scientific evidence? And then, of course, it depends on the quality of the data, the sample size, the research design. I'm just reading. Um, and that's why I think what you are telling us now, how rigorous you can go through it, and you can make some kind of a proper system to collect these data. When can you say that this is statistical analysis that can be used as scientific evidence? Will it never get to that? Do you have any
Well,
I
have
think
comments
you?
the
to this, Susan?
maximum is,
Yes,
yeah, I
Oh,
Susan.
was
I'm
just going
sorry,
to say, I
Susan.
think my husband is better to answer that question. I'm not a scientist, but when you have that much data, it's like MUFON's database,
Hmm.
Nuforic, Bufora from the UK, and others. Chris Rutkowski in Canada has done a lot of statistical analysis on our Canadian cases.
Hmm.
Then at that point you can make a decision on what you're going to do or how you're going to proceed in a specific location. But again, from my point of view, I am more interested in the work I did with on behalf of the Canadian Defence Studies Department for the Canadian military, was how these experiences affect not only individuals but larger institutions like the military themselves. So I'm not really qualified to answer any scientific questions or where
Hmm.
the science can go from this. I'm more interested in how it affects human beings and society at large. So it's a different. I'm coming at this from a different kind of um, point of view.
Hmm.
But I want to say thank you very much to Stephen. My first UFO sighting as an adult was investigated by Michigan MUFON. And when I began investigating reports myself, I did borrow from the MUFON investigators manual, even though I kind of struck out on my own. I never was really a MUFON member, but I have a lot of friends that are in MUFON.
Hmm.
So I really appreciated a lot of what you had to say. I do have a bit of a personal question, if that's okay.
Please.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to ask you, what got you interested in this subject? What got you motivated to join MUFON and investigate these types of reports?
Well, I think it's kind of a more of a two-part. I fell in the rabbit hole, as
And
most say,
just switching
at
gears.
at a very young age. Um, a couple things. I had a sighting when I was probably 13, 14 years old. But prior to that, I read. I just grew up as reading the chapter books, even as a kid. Every Agatha Christie mystery, and if it was a mystery, it was important to me. I wanted to find out everything about everything. And then fell into the rabbit hole after I read this book called Chariots of the Gods by Eric von Daniken. And I know you've never heard that before, but um and then like for instance, then life happened and there was a lot of things going on, but it was always there and I was always collecting the books and everything else. But then I became a police officer after being a military police in the U.S. Army. And I became a police officer, and I was a police officer and an investigator and charge of the detective bureau and everything from theft to homicide. And so now I'm retired, and I thought, I'm got back into this where I was reading a lot of things and doing a lot of things, and then I just started watching some podcasts, and I've been alone. I'm sure you've heard this phrase of lone wolf. I've never been
Yeah.
organized in a group for anything. I've just had all kinds of stuff on my own, and I thought, And then this guy named hides in long grass that's Mr. Mystery and the expert on Mothman. Um, kind of got me pointed in that direction. And I said, well, from a law enforcement standpoint, MUFON has had some issues last decade or so, and I don't know if I want to get involved in that. And he said, well, if you want to change something, maybe you can change it from the inside. And so I became a member, became a field investigator, bought the book, and now here I am talking to Norway, which just fascinates me. But
Mhm.
um, and I very much want to say that I um, appreciate the opportunity just to even speak with you and your mystery that you have there. Um, that is totally different from what we do. We have different sightings of different everything from your classic flying saucer to is it a biological? Is it a you know where you guys have pretty much it's right here. I know what I saw. It's a light and it's located right there
Mhm.
in one spot. And ours are never in one spot. Ours are all over the place. And you were talking about the database, Susan. Um, the right now, the last case I got was 135,700 and something.
Wow.
So MUFON has 135,000 cases in their database.
How
What's
many years?
been done with that? 135 and some thousand.
How over how many years?
Yes. Well, that's
From
my that
1969, I
was my
think.
current case number. I don't think I think they started at pretty much zero
Yeah,
and went to
so
one, two,
35,
three, and
35 years ago or something like that.
one. Yeah. 1969
Okay.
Yeah.
would have been the start of it. And like I said, right now I am almost 136,000 was one of the last
Wow.
ones that I was at. What's been
Hmm.
doing with all that? What's collating now? CMS, the case management system. I'm getting off base here, but the case management system just went through a rework just this last weekend where we were down for 3 days. The CMS was down for 3 days while they're getting new servers and new a lot of stuff and involved. But it all comes back to one person saying, "Forward, I know what I saw."
But do they?
If you think about the whole thing, that's what it all ends up to being when it
Yeah.
comes to witness reports. And I hope I gave you some good information, but this is just what I do. I mean, how I do it, just from my, and I know that I've talked to the last Paracon or XCon that I was just at Springfield, Missouri. I was sitting with three other MUFON members from different states, and we all do stuff differently. It's all has to do with your experience, your life experiences, how you came about it, and so it's not even though you got to fill in the blanks, and it's all kind of alike. We all do things differently,
Mhm.
and
I
I
I
think that's
wonder.
a good thing.
I wonder. Like you get the report, whether it's fast or it takes a long time, and then do you ever like contact them again, like years after? Would that? I would think like how how did this affect them? I guess that's what Susan is more interested in. Like, how does this affect that person that have seen something that is so different? I mean, if it's just a light, and they couldn't bother to stay there anymore, as you said, it wasn't that big thing. But if it's like you see this amazing thing, how does it affect them over the years? I wonder. And
I really haven't had that, but I've had
mm,
historical reports, which
yeah,
Susan, you'd be interested in. The it seems now that because since 2017, because you can say UFO without getting laughed out of the room in most places, and you can say about reports, and the other is age. I had one report here in the last few months where a man said, "My father's dying." And I'm thinking, I'm 67 years old and I never told anybody about my sighting. And I'm not going to be here forever. And it might not be important, but I want to tell you what happened to me when I was delivering newspapers back in 1973. And that's how the conversation started. And so some people, they've never forgotten from 1973. It's affected them their entire life and how they looked at things because I knew in 1973 we're not alone. You know, that's how they felt, and or that's how he felt. And a lot of people are like that. They're just now deciding after 50 years that they're going to report this. It comes down
Yeah, I
in
had
MUFON as an informational report because they're not sure of the date, they're not sure of the time. I can't do any of the weather, I can't do any of the. They may know a location. I was delivering. He said I was throwing a newspaper in front of Thorstedt's. Remember they used to have Thorstedt Chevrolet in Madison, Wisconsin. I said, yeah, I know exactly where you're talking. And so the location you can usually find, but he didn't know that. He pretty sure it was 73 because that's when the local grocery store shut down. Things like this, you got to try to reach out to witnesses, just like a witness interview. Well, I'm not sure if it was 73. Well, what do you remember of 1973? What happened in your life in 1973? Remember anything? And you can usually narrow it down, but you're not going to come up with a, yep, August 8th. So,
Yeah.
so I think I'm going. I thank you again for the opportunity. I'll back out here, and we're going to let Susan run with it. How's that?
Well, if
no,
Susan, you want to comment
I think
anything?
um I was going to ask you another question. In
Go ahead.
regards to going out on location, like, have you ever gone out to the location of the sighting for any reason or dealt with any physical traces?
No, I've never dealt with any
Okay.
physical traces or evidence. The gone out to location, yes, couple, three this year, where I've just gone out so I could stand at the intersection and look and
Mm.
just get a feel of what was going on at the time. Uh,
Yeah, I
as
think that's
for,
really important to do
yeah,
when you can.
when you can. The problem with the CAG, with the case assignment group, I'll get one that'll, like I told you about the story about the man in the swamp fishing in New Hampshire. Well, I'm not going to go there, but I think the the days of they still have the courses where you get out, and the book, of course, has them in there of gathering evidence and looking for electronic influence and things like that, your EMFs and things. But that's not really done. It's very rarely would that be done um, today. I guess is the thing, and it's too bad, but yet most cases are historical. And when you're looking at 1973, so I
Yeah.
knew right where he was standing, and I actually went in there because it was only about 9 miles from my house, where I could stand in front of that house, and then he was showing, this big and all that. But there's not a lot of evidence to be gathered unless it crashes on the White House lawn,
Mm.
and
No,
it's not
because
going to do that.
is that the case? Like whatever, however many witness reports you can get, you will never be it will never be accepted as scientific evidence.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I mean, because if you have a lot of anything,
Hmm.
and you were talking about scientific evidence needs repeatables.
Hmm.
You have to be able to repeat to study and to have, that's why the paranormal and ghosts and everything is so. You just can't get a ghost to walk through your front door on command. but you know, I have a little, I don't want to say trouble because that, but CE5s, Susan helps out. The CE5s, and you, because you're talking about the impression of people or how it affects people. You could have
Mhm.
four in the. They're talking about some of the CE5 stuff is where there'll be four people standing shoulder to shoulder looking at something, and all four people will have a different witness report. They'll
Yeah.
see something different.
Mhm.
Yeah, and this also happens not only in UFO cases, but because I have a strong interest in parapsychology, I can tell you that can happen on a vigil in a haunted house. You can have
Yes,
4 or 5 people in the same room, and 2 people will see an apparition of something, someone else will see some vague mist or smell, and 2 other people will see nothing.
yes,
And I don't know if that's a line of sight thing or something else, but it's the same with UFOs. Like I've tried to triangulate lights before in Ontario, and it can be difficult because depending upon where you're located, you can see very different things.
yes. We
So,
could go on with the paranormal for. I was
Yeah.
just
well,
a short
and
short
for
one. I was
me,
locked in. I was locked
mhm,
into. I did a lock in at the Joliet prison in Illinois, and with Dave Schrader and Shane Pittman. I don't know if you know those names, Susan.
I know Dave Schrader.
Okay, yeah, he's a
Yeah.
hoot. Anyway, um, I've been on a couple of ghost hunts with them guys, and three of us, the person from Joliet, Shane Pittman was just to my left, and he's about a foot shorter than I. So I was looking over his head. I saw his head snap to the left, and I said, "Are you looking at that shadow person on the second tier um, in the prison?" And he goes, "You see it too?" And I go, "Yeah, I'm looking right over your head." Okay, I'm short, you know what I mean? But yeah, the woman that was standing right to his left didn't see it. She saw as kind of a blobby thing. We saw it as a human-like form.
Mm.
And so, like you say, you can be right next to somebody, whether it be a UFO report or I don't know if you're familiar with a man named Jimmy Church. He does a
Yes.
Jimmy Church does a podcast Monday through Thursday in the U.S.
Mhm.
here called Fade to Black. For those of you who are unfamiliar, Hides is one of his regulars, but he does Fade to Black. Now he saw over Mount Shasta, he saw a UFO, and he goes, "I know what I saw." And Jimmy Church saw a beer can. Now anybody that knows Jimmy Church would think of anybody I know, Jimmy Church would be the one to see a beer can, in the sky spinning around. Where somebody else might have seen an angelic figure or something else. Jimmy saw a beer can. So it just works out that way. And I'm just taking up way too much of your time. So I'm gonna buzz out here again. And in case anybody else has any questions, I'll hang out for a while.
Okay.
Again, I thank you for the opportunity. And Susan, all yours.
Okay, well, I really didn't have much to add, other than at the time I haven't been doing any like real witness reports for a number of years now since I've moved to Italy anyway. But at the time when I did a lot of similar to MUFON style investigations. I did try to go out of my way when I could to meet with people. And the reason why is because with the forms, and we had pretty robust forms as well, that I would share with Chris in Manitoba for the Canadian UFO survey. People know when they've had experiences that are mind-boggling. They don't want to appear crazy. So I always found that when I would meet with people in person, I usually got more information out of them.
Mhm.
When they were able to see me, I'm a pretty friendly person. Often I would try and break the ice a little bit as well by letting people know that I too am a UFO experiencer. And this is where I would get more information that I'm interested in as far as high strangeness is concerned, which really is a large part of my own research interest is these high strange cases. And I found that with the forms themselves, people do tend to hold back a little bit because most of us know when we're starting to sound a little crazy, and we don't want that. People don't want to, they're already saying I've saw a UFO. They don't want to go the extra little bit and say I think I saw the UFO pilot too. So I always found that it was for me helpful, at least back in the day when I could, to meet with people over a cup of coffee in a public place and just say, hey, I have
Mhm.
some extra questions. And sometimes they wouldn't have anything more to add on the sighting, but I'd find out that they grew up in a haunted house, or that their dad had a sighting like 40 years ago or something like that. Some other little tidbit that kind of lent to a bigger picture, um, of what that person's personal experience was, and perhaps the greater experience of UFOs and how they affect us again as a society, as different societies, as different cultures. I'm very interested in that, even more so even than to try to at this point solve the mystery. I'm still hopeful, like with people like my husband Massimo, the science part. But for me, I'm just really interested in hearing how people, what they experience, how they experience it, and
Mm.
how it's affected them personally. So
I have,
that's where I'm at.
yeah, I have invited to speak one person that's called Helge, because I would say that what he has seen, if I had seen that, that would definitely affect me personally. So if Helge, you want to comment anything to Susan, how it affected you, you're welcome. Anybody else wants to ask a question, then you are welcome to ask me. Let me see.
I'm gonna
Do we
pause.
have Helge is actually here? Yes. Can we hear Helge?
Hello,
How?
can you hear me?
Yes. How has this? Maybe you
Yes.
want to give a short summary of why I say you have seen something that would definitely change my worldview, and how has it affected you?
Uh, it was in 2019. I saw some creatures in Hesdal,
Mm.
very unexpected,
Hmm.
and afterwards it has affected me just positively, and people around me have not laughed about me or my sightings, and this is now 4 years ago, and I have just positive in mind for it, and certainly I hope I can see something like that later too.
Yeah,
And I know I am going up to Hessdalen in the late of December and 1st of January. So
it's
for me, it has only been positively.
I don't know. Susan, do you have any questions to Helge or whatever? I feel that if I had seen something that you're telling, I would be scared.
No, I'm not the easiest man to scare. So I have experienced many paranormal things, both
Mhm.
here at home and other places, and in Hesdal.
Mhm.
Not only the phenomenon or these creatures, but many other things. So it's important to say that it's more than one thing that's happened in Hesdal. But for me, I'm not scared, and so I said I hope I will see something like that later on.
Sir, what did you see?
Maybe next year when we're all in Histalen.
Yeah. There was a question that came in here, like,
Yeah.
sir, what did you see? I don't know who asked that, but what did you
That
see?
was me. I
That
jumped
was
in there.
you. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Please.
What did you see, sir?
Well, I was wandering around the road in Hessdalen in September 2019, and in my eye I saw two long creatures come running up from the valley down by the river, and it was about they were about over 2 meters high, oval head, long limbs, legs, arms, and they just looked as surprised as I did to see each other. So they just went running over the road and up in the wood. And up in the wood, the sheep and the animals started to get crazy. So it was something very strange I saw. It was just alien creatures, and other people saw the same just some days later. So it was a very amazing thing that turns the whole Hessdalen phenomena up right down for me and my friends up there.
Yes, sir. Thank you. How's that for strangeness? High strangeness, Susan?
That's pretty. I knew Helgi's story, so but I mean, hearing it again, yeah, it's chilling, and that is high strangeness for sure.
And for
Thank you,
it,
Helgi.
yeah, for me it's also like
You're welcome.
yeah, when I've now met Helge on the screen, not face to face, but I've talked to him many times. It does change the story. It's more personal. Um, so have you Stephen taken stories about like this non-human?
No, I really haven't.
No, no,
Um, more of the more in the paranormal
yeah, yeah,
realm, or in the apparitions, wraith, disembodied spirits, things like that,
hmm
but not in a MUFON report. There's a definite separation. MUFON
hmm
has a rule. I guess it's not a rule or a law, but if it's has to do with the paranormal,
hmm
other than orbs, because orbs kind of made it here,
hmm
and the same thing with your lights, that's different. But
hmm
if it's paranormal, somebody sees a ghost, um, and unless there was a UFO flying over at the same time, MUFON's really not interested. They've got
hmm
enough to do with the UFO thing, and as Susan, I'll pick on you again here. Linda Moulton Howell is big on, or as we in the business say, LMH, and like EVD. But Linda Moulton Howell is big on the high strangeness thing, and that's how. But she still doesn't really get into the anything of the paranormal other than the UFOs and cattle mutilations and all that daily stuff. But I'm telling you that story that I just heard, you had told me earlier in the day. Um, you had told me that earlier in the day. I didn't know it was the same story until I heard it again. But that's definitely in the high strangeness, and um, I just love that stuff.
Can I just jump in and thank you, Helge? This is the first time I heard this story firsthand from you. I heard it several times, and I was actually snooping around there in that area where those creatures came from not long ago. Actually, a bit creepy. I put up a camera. We'll see if we can catch anything.
yeah.
Hopefully, it can.
Yes, I hope. Yes, I hope there's many cameras that can be set up, and maybe something can be filmed sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I just have to share a quick thing. We were talking about C5 and stuff. When I was at the Blue Box in earlier in the fall, a woman appeared on the fields, and she said she was a C5 type of person. She was doing meditation. Was going up on a mountain to do meditation in Hessdalen. And she told me that she had been meditating in one of these Viking burial grounds that are not far from Hessdalen. There are a lot of those here in Norway. and she with a friend, and they have saw this cloud that popped up on a blue sky from a blue sky, a kind of a cloud, and then out of the cloud this metallic object appears. And according to her, both of them. I mean, the question I had was, okay, did the other one see the same thing? Yes. And she was really into that. That was kind of produced by them. And then I asked the question, and here I am sweating and working really hard to put up a camera. How can this camera produce? But we know already that the camera has caught. I mean, like the famous one from 1999. So it's kind of a little bit of a. I don't say it doesn't have to be a conflict, but I want to believe we can catch this without people involved with the automatic measuring station. Otherwise, it will be really hard to prove this scientifically. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, I see some names I know here, so I'm gonna invite to speak. If you do have a question, then we use a few more minutes, and then hopefully this is it. So I'm inviting you, and because there's not so many, so you can.
I would guess hides in long grass has to say something here.
Oh, if he wants to, I can invite him again. He turned it off.
There he goes.
All right,
Hi.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic. I'm not sure what Steve wants me to say, but I think
Hi.
it's important that we have North America now talking to Norway, all these little different sections of the world where there are pockets of people that want to investigate. Getting everyone together, working together, standardizing data, sharing data. It's all important. You know, Somewhere, somehow, there's going to be a next little step that moves us forward. Like when Hynek classified CE1, CE2, CE3. I mean, if nothing else, that was useful for categorizing data. Sharing some of the MUFON concepts with regards to investigating, taking eyewitness reports. And I'm not sure if anyone at MUFON would want to hear from the Hestalin project and say, hey, we've got 50 to 100 people over here that are interested. Give us some training, help us organize, help us formulate, help us figure out what sort of data means something to our cohorts in North America. Should we be collecting this or that if they think it's useless, right? Or what should we focus on? Just getting everybody together, and like I told Steve, there's a lot of people online, a lot of people who can't afford to go out and buy equipment only to find out, oh, this doesn't work. So, looking around for what's standardized, what's acceptable. Like I think you guys have your blue box. In the US, we have UFO DAP. We also have UAPX, but UAPX doesn't seem to sell their products or even give you data analysis on it. So if everyone can agree what's good data, then people can then invest their time and money into learning how to use it and then going online and sharing it. We currently in our own country here in the U.S. We've made a lot of noise. We've gotten Congress to do something. They've made an office that likes to come forward and tell us that we have nothing. Well, that's great. Years and years of effort, and that's what we've gotten to. But what happens when we start collecting the data ourselves? Completely remove the authorities from the entire chain of evidence.
Yeah.
Something to think about. So.
Yeah.
And people should remember too that I hate to put it this way, but the US Air Force in particular has played dirty pool with this topic. So I would be more encouraging of projects like Project Hestalin or like some of the work that's being done in the United States, even at Skinwalker Ranch, which is outside of the government's purview. Because, I mean, if they have something, share it with the world already. Let the scientists, separate scientists, have a look at it. But I'm kind of over the idea of waiting for the U.S. government to kind of confirm, or deny or whatever, because unless they have something physical to show, I mean, it's all just talk at this point, right? And they haven't been 100% honest with this subject in the past. Just my opinion.
I really hope that we are able to get more funding to Project Hesdalen. We're just in the start of that, after all. We've been able to get a few members. That is enough to kind of pay a little bit of the internet bills, but we are trying to get more funding, donations, and that is important because without the money, we can't buy the equipment. So, yep.
I would like to add, I mean, I totally agree, but we also need people because there are
Yeah.
a lot of different skill sets that we need. Because even if we have tons of money, I mean, that would be great, of course, but buy all this stuff. But who's going to run that stuff? Who's going to analyze the data, collect the data? I mean, we need people as well, and really dedicated people. So I think that's also a challenge. But maybe with the funding, people come as well. I hope so.
And now we got the latest member showed up, Lunar Strain, the one with the sunglasses. Do you have a question? And yes or no? I think we could.
Might be a microphone issue.
Yeah, maybe. Can't hear you. He's on the mobile. Yeah. Yeah, there's so many things we could continue on. I really want to see if we can make a good system for how to do witness reports and how to put it on onto a good database. Or maybe it's already there. Maybe we should just use the MUFON. And if we can filter out just Hesdalen from that, what is the best way to do it? I don't know. But my goal, and as Magnus is saying, it's time. We need the resources to do it. If we manage to get the witness report database onto a new system, a new database, then it would be nice to have it connected with the Blue Box, so you can do triangulation, and you can also see when the witness report how that relates to what the box itself took a picture of, a video of. So lots of things to do. So please, you can join as resources. That would be just nice. Any
Have
last
you guys
question? Yeah.
gotten?
Oh, yes, please. Somebody's talking.
Oh, did you guys? You guys were looking into getting a UFO DAP, I believe. Do I remember
Magnus?
that correctly?
Well,
Magnus?
I have actually used I've used UFO DAP on a camera in Hesdalen in August. I think that was the first use ever UFO DAP, and the plan is to connect that to one of the new cameras. But I had some technical issues with that for the moment, but I'm working with Ron to solve that. So yeah, that's the plan for sure.
Would you be interested in putting together? I don't know. I'm thinking like something like a YouTube video that everyone could share. Just basic. I got this UFO DAP. This is approximately what it costs. This is how you use it. This is intuitive. This isn't. These are problems. Something like that. Because I think if there's a product out there off the shelf that people can buy, that people could use, and when we talk to each other, we're speaking the same language. UFO DAP as opposed to something from UAPX that nobody else has access to. And when you speak that language, they don't know what they're looking at. Would you be able to put something like that together and share it on the or either on the Discord or on the Hesdalen Project website? I think that could be useful going forward, and I'm not sure if in the future if the people who make UFO DAP are like, hey, wow, look, Hestalen's doing us a favor. Maybe in the future they, I don't know, maybe help you fix a tech problem for free. Just a thought, and they might even help you analyze things if they know that you're, part of their team.
So
You're encouraging
we
people
have,
to use it. You're talking about
yeah,
it. Yeah.
yeah, we have also joined Sky 360, been part of those discussions a couple of times. And what I have noticed, or my concern about 360 was that it doesn't help much in the wintertime when there's good conditions to take pictures because it's too open. It's going to be covered with snow every day, any day. So, but then I realized that it's also a system, it's a camera system. So if I just want the front facing camera, I can probably use the same software that is in there.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
just the time. It's just the
I can
time.
add to this. Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
good point. I'm actually going to have a meeting next week with this guy 360 people because I just dropped a question to them last week. Do you want to guys talk about a collaboration? And they said yeah.
Mm.
And I think Sky 360 is more than just. I mean, it's a data acquisition system as well, which we are in a big need of. So I think that cameras are actually the least of our worries now. It's the software. We need really good software, and I think that's the big that I think that's the biggest challenge for us. We need a really good data collection and recording software that can take all these channels in and that it's good for analysis later and collect the right data, the relevant data, not the irrelevant one, and I think that's the big challenge now. And Sky 360 could help us with that, even though their current vanilla camera setup is optimal for Hästdalen. But they are willing to work with us. That's my impression I got when I just talked to them, and next week I will get more info. So yeah, I mean we need that stuff, and the UFO app ID hides that's a good one, and I would love to do that when I have the time, and I will put that on my list for sure.
Is Sky 360 only the visible light spectrum?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think you could connect. You could connect to thermal cameras to that system as well, and that's kind of the point here, that we need a very general or generic system that could connect any sensor data and gather that and store that in a good way.
It's not necessarily thermal, but if you have the full spectrograph, so the reflectance, you can usually tell what the composition is of the object that's reflecting
Yeah,
light.
and that's on the plan, really. Massimo could probably talk a lot about this. That is his specialty. He's an astrophysicist, right? But that's in the plans to have a medium resolution, a higher resolution than used before. But that requires some hardware, and we need to, be able to detect the phenomenon, zoom in on it, triangulate. And all of that. So it's in the plan, but that will be kind of the next phase or the later phase. But I would love to do that.
Samuelson, do you know anything about this Sky 360? It looks like.
Yeah, so I can answer some questions around Sky 360. Hi, I'm Ido Samuelsson from Sky 360.
Yeah, hi.
Hi. Yeah, so I'm looking forward actually to meet you on Thursday. I'm not sure if I will actually be on the call or not. I know it's recorded. I'm going to be on the flight for the Sol Foundation conference on the weekend. But yeah, we are not really only visible aspect, like only cameras. We also look at microphones, also passive RF and more, like movement detectors we're researching. So there's a lot of stuff, but the main kind of infrastructure that we are building is our own kind of modified operating system with robotic operating system on top of it, real time, and then the mission control from NASA as the user interface. So the whole purpose is data acquisition for many sensors and working on multi-sensor fusion to kind of get a bigger picture from everything that we are collecting. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we want and need, because we're talking about multiple sensors and a sensor network in Hästdalen. I'm really looking forward to this meeting Thursday.
Yeah, me too.
Can the system
Thanks.
measure distance like LiDAR?
So again, right now it's in a very early stage. I'm still building the infrastructure. I'm kind of the sole contributor in a way right now. We did a lot of like different works, but I took a step back to like really build it from the ground up. Think about reliability, different weather conditions, and all of that. So I'm really focusing on making sure everything is stable. Also, bleeding edge I would say like software kind of solutions. Again, NixOS is one, ROS2 is another one, and then OpenMCT that NASA is using. So that they all have, in their own sense, kind of their own production, I would say experience, but not together, right? And not for the purpose of like a multi-sensor fusion system. So that's kind of new. So a lot of the work that I'm doing is actually going through like code and documentation to figure out how to do something that is not documented. So it's a lot of research all the time, unfortunately. But to your question, the idea of once we integrate, the camera, GPS, whatever, you'll be able to pretty much copy paste, a sensor folder to your own sensor, and then start working on changing the code to your sensor, right?
Yeah.
We should have a
and
workshop.
I really like that you guys are building that from a kind of industrial or even military grade, like the RUS robotic operating system and stuff. That's, I think, the way to go. Because
I'm coming from that, so I can do it in a different way. I work on border protection, so it's very similar. But I would say more low level on the raw data. So we are really focusing on not touching the raw data, recording the raw data rather than like a situation awareness, but really focus on the raw data itself. So once the data is recorded, you can rebuild the situational awareness in a deterministic fashion. It would be the same.
We have some comments on the side here about Madar.
Are the sealed units of the system in a vacuum? I'm just aware that you're exposing it to extremes of weather, and I was wondering about the condensation problem.
Yeah, like for example, I'm the software engineer, so I'm not an expert on the physical aspect, but we have Christian on our team, and he developed something for the dew problem that we will have from the fisheye camera and from the PTF. So he can speak in very details about that. I know he is about to put his camera outside in Germany, and also I think Richard is going to put his and test that solution. So we are constantly like engineering either hardware or software and testing it. Most on the hardware. We have more people on the hardware actually.
Yeah, I was just thinking it might be an idea to look at some of the designs for underwater cameras to consider the seals.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, and I was just going to ask, I mean, are you guys kind of understaffed, or are you feel that, I mean, are you kind of expanding in terms of number of people, or because I mean, this type of product should attract people that are interested in this area and also have the skill sets to work with this stuff.
Yeah, so it's kind of surprising to me that the talent that I would expect to be attracted to it is not really attracted. But I've noticed that a lot of people or a lot of engineers that wants to contribute are not really in the mindset of learning new technologies and learning like advanced engineering and really work on out of their comfort zone. So, contribution is always welcome. Like we also appreciate that, and I'm always willing like to guide someone if they want to work on a specific sensor or whatever. And it's just like you have to know the tools that we selected. You have to go through the tutorials, you have to learn it and become, I would say, an expert on it. Otherwise, you will struggle too much.
Yeah,
right? So if you expect to just like download our source code in a way, which is not much right now, but be able to write your, implementing your sensor and it will just works. That's not the stage we are. We will be there, but not today. Today you need to. It's more like on the platform infrastructure level right now.
Yeah, well, let's not have this discussion too long. But I just want a final question, which we have thought about that ourselves. We want to involve some university that can actually feed us with students for like master thesis or some kind of thesis work. I've been involved in that in other areas. So I think that could have been a very good way of getting young talented engineers into this that are interested.
Yeah,
Hence,
absolutely. Yeah,
but let's talk about that more later.
sounds good.
Yeah,
Okay,
thanks.
pleasure to meet you all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you too.
Yeah. I think we should say thank you for almost 2 hours. So unless there are some questions in the chat, so I urge everyone to go and read through that. Also some images. But for me, this was interesting, very good. Thank you. And I got more than I expected. Thank you, Stephen. Your contribution was the start of it all, but I think we got even more after, because we had this discussion after. So thank you very much. Okay, people are
You're
leaving.
very welcome.
That was nice. I hope to see you again.
Thank you. It was very interesting.
Yeah, thank you. So unless somebody has some last questions, no, we are saying goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Night.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.